right? So this is going to give us, if we limit the domain of the sign to negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, that means the range of the inverse will be negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, right? And since the sign gives us values from negative 1 to 1, that's the range, that means the domain of the inverse is negative 1 to 1. Remember, they switch each other. So again, for the sine, we're interested from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. For the cosine, it's 0 to pi. For the tangent, it's negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. Right? The domain of inverse functions. For the sine, it's negative 1 to 1. For the cosine, it's negative 1 to 1, because those are the limiting values on sine and cosine. Right? Now, tangent, remember, tangent, if you go back and look at that graph, the range of a tangent is all real numbers, right? It could equal anything because it goes on infinitely up and infinitely down. So that's why the domain of a tan inverse is all real numbers. Now, when you're looking at this here, every one of these here is, they're not using the sine inverse and cosine inverse and tan inverse. They're using a word, which I don't even know where it comes from. I might have looked it up one time, but I forget. But instead of saying sine inverse, they're saying arc sine. Instead of saying cosine inverse, arc cosine, and arc tangent. But it means the same thing, and they're not consistent. Sometimes they use sine to the minus 1, sometimes they use arc sine. So just think of them as the same thing. Yeah, probably. I personally, I don't like using the arc stuff, but it's in there and it's hard to deny it. So it's better just to, get with the program and use it. Now, one little bit of geek trivia is that when you see it in math speak, like when you're doing mathematical proofs and you want to say if and only if, and you're writing out if and only if, that's like this right here. Actually, it's written like this, IFS. That's a word. In mathematical proofs, that's a word. That means if and only if. Right? If and only if means if this, then that, and if that, then this. It means it points both directions. That's what if and only if means. And you write it as IFS. Back in college when I had to do all these proofs all the time, that was just common. IFS in cursive. I wish I kept all those notes. I didn't.